Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the Flight Sim world. This is Fiber Strike 95 Flight Simming, and today we're here at beautiful Mackinac Island here in Michigan today. So, guys, welcome to the Wolverine State. So, I hope you're all having a great weekend so far. Happy Sunday to all of you guys here too. But yes, Michigan, one of the really unique states of the United States, one of the traditional major states in the country. Now, of course, Michigan is definitely well known for a lot of things. It's known for the automobile industry. It's also known for the Michigan Wolverines football, and of course, Michigan's also well known for its history too. Guys, I hope you're all having a good weekend, and we get ready for today's stream, part 26 of our journey. Yes, we officially crossed over halfway point, and we're getting ready to continue on this journey once again. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to all the people in chats and lurkers. Hello, hello. Good to see you guys here too. So today's flight plan is we're going to be at Mackinac Island. Yes, we didn't start at the Northern Peninsula, but we did start in Mackinac Island, at historic Mackinac Island area. Then we'll go over the tip of the island to Mackinac Island, where you can visit the old fort and stuff. Then from there, we'll head southwest to our first stop, to our first waypoint at Traverse City. Then from Traverse City, we'll make our way down. Again, we'll make our way to Wexford County Airport, at Cadillac, Michigan. At Cadillac, Michigan. Then from Cadillac, Michigan, we'll head our way south, and we'll eventually make our way over to our second stop at Grand Rapids Gerald R. Ford Airport. So here's Grand Rapids. Here it is, downtown Grand Rapids. And we'll make our way east to Gerald R. Ford Airport, the main airport for the Grand Rapids area. Then from there, we will go through the capital of Michigan, Lansing. Then we'll visit the famous college community of Ann Arbor, visit city and college community, Ann Arbor. We'll visit Ypsilanti, Eastern Michigan, and then we'll head up east to Detroit. We'll visit the Motor City, check out the Ford Motor Plant and the company location. Dearborn, and then we visit downtown Detroit. We fly around the downtown, fly over all the major areas in the city, and then make our way to Belle Isle, and then make our final stop at Coleman Young Municipal Airport in Detroit. So that will be our final stop, guys. So like I said, Michigan's really a unique state in a unique area of the country. So for this one, we're going to take the Bonanza for this trip. I think the Bonanza would be a pretty good choice for this trip. Um, so that's where we're going to take here today, the Bonanza. I thought this would be a good plane for today. That's because next week we're going to take, in Florida, we're going to take the Albatross. For the trip in Florida, we'll take the good old Albatross for Florida, and then take something faster for Texas. Let's go over to our Bonanza here. So we'll be starting at Mackinac Island Airport today. This public use airport is located here in Mackinac County, Michigan, located northwest of downtown Mackinac Island, Michigan. This airport was started as a grass strip in 1934, then it got paved in 1953. It's currently used for general aviation purposes now. It used to have commercial ops, but not really much anymore. It's a pretty neat little airport as well. So that's where we're here at Mackinac Island Airport. Pretty neat little area. And then we're going to go to, and then we're at Mackinac Island, Michigan. Now, this is actually a really unique city here in Michigan. Now, Mackinac Island, Michigan is pretty unique among Michigan cities. Its population is only 583 people. But what makes this community unique is there was actually, it was established as a fur trade center during the 18th century with a predominantly French-speaking population of both French Canadians and Metis, which is mixed race indigenous people. After the War of 1812, the city gained more Anglo-American residents. And then from 1818 to 1882, the city served as the county seat of Fishkill-Mackinac County, and then became Mackinac. But one really neat thing about this community is an ordinance in 1895 that prohibits the use of motor vehicles on the island. The only exception are emergency vehicles, city service vehicles, and snowmobiles. Meaning most travels either by foot, bicycle, horse, or carriage. Roller skates are also allowed except for the downtown area, and it's home to the famous Grand Hotel built in the 19th century. And it was actually the location of the 1980 movie Somewhere in Time. It was filmed here. But it's a really historic community and one of the cooler areas here in Michigan. So, if you ever got a chance to visit Michigan, this would be one of the top places to visit in the state. It's just really neat. It takes you back in time. So much simpler. So of course we're going to be, I'll be going around 170 knots, give or take. So let's go ahead and get this parking thing taken care of, and we're going to go ahead and take off here in Michigan. So I hope you guys having a great stream here, and I hope you guys are having a good week. I know the Bremen flight was absolutely Also, yes, I managed to get my flap settings finally worked. So yes, I can now use my add-on to finally control the flaps. The only thing I can't seem to control is the landing gear. I got everything else controlled. So we're going to go ahead and fly up to... Yeah, and all this area is the state park. Beautiful Mackinac Island. Of course, much of this area is connected by the Mackinac Bridge. which I believe we can actually see from this. Now here it is, Mackinac Island, downtown community of Mackinac Island, Michigan. Here it is, guys. Bonus points if you want to. Community. And there's the Grand Hotel in the background. Beautiful snapshot of the hotel with the downtown, but a very historic place. We'll just fly on the island. Olo Island. Here it is. Mackinac Island. There's the entirety of the island. And get back to the cockpit. Be a pretty healthy speed. 163. But yeah, absolute crazy stream last night of the Bremen flight. One absolutely crazy stream. So we're going to be talking about the U.S. state of Michigan here. So Michigan, it's located in the Great Lakes region of the upper Midwest. It shares water and land boundaries with Minnesota, the Northwest, Wisconsin to the west, Illinois and Indiana to the southwest, Ohio to the southeast, and the Canadian province of Ontario to the east, northeast, and north. With a population of 10.1 million people, Michigan is the 10th largest state in the country by population and 11th largest by area, with a total area of 96,716 square miles, making it the largest state by land area east of the Mississippi. The capital is Lansing, most populous city is Detroit. And there's actually something unique about Michigan. There's actually two peninsulas. You have the northern upper peninsula, which juts eastward from Wisconsin, and the other one is the lower peninsula, which is from Ohio. We're going to stretch north from Ohio and Indiana, and they're separated by the Straits of Mackinac. The French were some of the first people to come here as well. And then it was inhabited by American tribes, and then this was taken by the British during the French and Indian War, followed by the Americans taking control of the Treaty of Paris. And of course, Michigan was admitted as the 26th state, 7 as a free state. It quickly became an industrial trade hub that's lasted for decades. Fun fact about Michigan, believe it or not, Michigan has the longest freshwater coastline of any U.S. subdivision. Which is pretty impressive. Its coastlines are about 3,200 miles. pretty important stuff. Michigan is a diverse economy with $711 billion as of 2024, which makes it 14th among U.S. states. You know, it's quite diverse. In the early 20th century, it was the center of the automobile industry, which helped develop into a natural economic force. And of course, the Upper Peninsula is known for tourism due to a natural reason, while the Lower Peninsula is known for manufacturing. So yes, Michigan is an absolute powerhouse of a U.S. state. Not many even think about it, but yes, Michigan was a very important U.S. state. Economically, was a very important U.S. state economically. So the history of Michigan can date back to its earlier settlers, or even the Europeans even arrived. There were several native tribes. Mainly, they were for the Algonquin speaking, including the Anishinaabe groups of the Ojibwe, Odawa, or the Ottawa people, and the Potawatomi people, or the Potawatomi people. They coexisted peacefully as part of a loose confederation called the Council of Free Fires, and the largest were the Ojibwe people, which have around 35,000. They were established in the Upper Peninsula in northern central Michigan, while the Ottawa tribes lived in the south of the Mackinac and other people. There were plenty of other people. And there were also other tribes, such as the Mascouten, the Menominee people, the Miami tribe, the Sauk, and the Meskwaki, or Fox tribe of the Native American. Of course, the first Europeans to arrive here in Michigan were French voyagers and coureurs de bois who settled in this area during the 17th century. The first Europeans to reach what became Michigan were those of Etienne Brule's expedition in 1622. The first permanent European settlement here was found in 1668 on the site where Pierre Jacques Marquette established St. Sault, Michigan. St. Marie, Michigan, the base of the missions, and it was the first European settlement. They also founded other ones at Marquette and St. Ignace, Michigan, and they were well received by the Indian populations. Now, the French also established a train base in Fort St. Joseph, which is now the present-day city of Niles, Michigan. Of course, in the 18th century, it started in 1701, French explorer Antonio de la Motte-Cadillac, he actually founded Fort Pontchartrain, Detroit, on the banks of the Detroit River, which, if you guys know anything about that basically became the settlement of Detroit. And Cadillac had convinced King Louis XIV's minister to a permanent community would allow the French to strengthen their control of the Great Lakes, and eventually built modern-day Fort Detroit, which became known as the Motor City. Also, the French strengthened their Fort Mackinac to secure their Fortran Empire, and then from 1660 to the end of French rule, French was part of the world province of New France, and the French then lost it in the 7 Years' War from the British under the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Of course, afterwards, Michigan then became part of the province of Quebec. That didn't last too long because guess what? With the American Revolutionary War happening, Michigan became a very important center for the British supply center. But it didn't really matter because the Americans won the American Revolution. Michigan still remained controlled of Detroit, Michigan after the Revolution. However, Britain withdrew from Detroit in 1796. And eventually, though, as well. Then, of course, the War of 1812 happened, where the Americans originally surrendered Michigan territory in a bloodless siege. Then in 1812, a U.S. attempt to retake Detroit resulted in a severe American defeat at the River Raisin Massacre, and still the bloodiest battle in the state. Of course, Michigan was then recaptured by the Americans in 1813 after the Battle of Lake Erie, and used Michigan as a base to launch an invasion of Canada, which resulted in the Battle of the Thames. Of course, more northern areas of Michigan were held by the British until peace was restored with all boundaries, and that still remained what it is today. Boundaries. Of course, the population grew slowly until 1825 when the Erie Canal opened, and that connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River in New York City, and that attracted a lot of settlers into the Michigan territory, including farmers, lumbermen, shipbuilders, and merchants. And by 1830, Michigan had around 30,000 residents, which is more than enough to apply for statehood. Now, one interesting thing about Michigan statehood, and this is actually a really interesting story about that, you actually see in 1835, they had a constitutional convention that happened in 1835 to do the Constitution, and thereby created their state governments. But there was one major catch. You see, there was a boundary dispute between Michigan and Ohio. You know, that sound familiar? Well, it led to the Toledo War, and that was because of a boundary dispute. You see, Ohio wanted the city of Toledo because they thought that they could have it as a canal and it would prove to be vital economically, while Michigan wanted to keep it. So eventually, it led to a Toledo War. So ultimately, Congress decided to actually settle it peacefully, thankfully, and the Toledo Strip was handed to Ohio. What Michigan received was the western part of the Upper Peninsula as a concession, and they gained it in 1837. And it turned out that, yeah, I think Michigan won that deal, because guess what they got from the Upper Peninsula? It turned out Upper Peninsula was rich in resources, including lumber, iron, and copper. So it became one of the leaders in lumber production and copper as well, and attracted even more immigrants to Michigan, even more so than usual. Of course, Michigan was also a major part of the U.S. Civil War. Let's not forget, Michigan was really heavily involved in the significant contribution and sent more than 40 regiments of volunteers. Michigan played a big role in that Civil War, despite being far removed from the conflict. So Michigan played a pretty big role in it. However, what really grew Michigan into the state it is today was during the 20th century, especially the early half, with many individuals such as Ransom E. Olds, John Horace Dodge, Henry Leyland, David Dunbar Buick, Henry Joy, Charles King, and Henry Ford all produced the automotive industry, helped grow the United States into one of the titans of the automobile industry. Ford's development of a moving assembly line marked a new era in transportation, like the steamship railroads. Mass production of automobiles was far-reaching development. More than other transportation, it transformed private life in Detroit, basically became a major industry, and altered the life of the world. Because of that, Detroit created tons of jobs that attracted immigrants from not just from the US, but from Europe. And by 1920, the city of Detroit became the fourth largest city in the United States. And Detroit became pretty rich. And it wasn't just Detroit, but also Grand Rapids was also growing too, with mainly its furniture industry. And Michigan also held some other firsts, including the first U.S. presidential primary election in 1910, as well as being one of the centers of the rise of unions. Of course, World War II played a major role, and Michigan became one of the big U.S. states in the war. In fact, they produced 10% of all military armaments in the war, second to New York, which it was actually a major manufacturing hub. Of course, post-World War II era, however, was when Michigan started to decline a little bit. You see Michigan, with the rise of highways as well as the white flight and other stuff, and deindustrialization, Michigan did have a bit of a decline over the past few years. Most notably, Detroit was negatively very much affected by deindustrialization. Combine that with riots and issues, and oil crisis stuff, Michigan had a lot of issues. At one point, it was the highest unemployment of any U.S. state. Though that being said, with the diversification of economic sector, Michigan looks like it's going to be on its way back up. That concludes a bit of our history with the U.S. state of Michigan. So that's our history lesson of Michigan today. So that is why we're here in beautiful Michigan today. We're heading our way down to Traverse Cities. So yeah, guys, I hope you had a good weekend here as well. There has been some really interesting stuff that had to go on for quite a bit. And that is going to be the fact that we had some pretty cool stuff this week. Yesterday, I was watching the Premier League game, and yes, Everton won. The Toffees won the Premier League game against Nottingham Forest. I would take the 3 points any day of the week against Nottingham Forest. And considering what's going on now with Tottenham absolutely choking it against Ipswich, it looked, especially with Spurs struggling against Wolves, I don't think Spurs are going to pass this huge. I'll happily take being ahead of Tottenham. That's a big win for the Toffees. Just hoping Newcastle beats Manchester United, because if that's the case, we beat them. That means next week, if the Toffees get a win or even get points against, or even get a point against Manchester United against Man City, that would be huge. And that will allow the Toffees to climb ahead of Manchester United. That would be really nice to have. That being said, the game we're going to be playing against is Manchester City, and they're really good. So, good luck doing it. Would love to get a win against Manchester City at home. That would be to set the tempo. Other news as well to cover for this week. The other bit of news is going to be for baseball. So for other sports news, for baseball at least, be covering so far the Rays are at the bottom of the AL East. I figured that was going to be the case this season. And then for the Reds, they're actually third. Yeah, nice 2-game winning streak for the Reds. So Friends of the NL West looks like the Padres and Giants are looking to be really good this year. They're doing better than the Dodgers. But man, it's gonna be tough beating the Dodgers if they're fully healthy. Then. Of course, the Tigers are doing really well this year. They're actually off to the tie with the best record in the American League this year. The Tigers are actually really good this year. The Guardians got a 5-game win streak. They're doing pretty good. So yeah, for baseball, things are going pretty interestingly as well. The MLS is another one too. I know in the stands for the MLS, the East Conference is ruled by Charlotte this year. Charlotte's looking good. And so is Cincinnati. Cincy's doing pretty good too. Cincinnati are doing well. Columbus is pretty good. Miami with Messi. Philadelphia, Nashville, Orlando are still there as well. They're looking to be pretty good in the East. And in the West, it's Vancouver has been amazing this year. They're followed by Minnesota. Then the newcomer, San Diego. The newest team, San Diego, is doing pretty good. Colorado, Austin, Los Angeles Football Club, Portland, and FC Dallas. Yeah, some pretty interesting stuff with the MLS, of course. I know American soccer. I get it, U.S. soccer is 5th, but I still wanted to cover that too. Since FC Cincinnati is part of it as well. So, yeah, we're in beautiful Michigan here, guys. For this, basically, this is also the home state of Sergeant Staff and Colonel Fork if they're here. This is their home state, so we'll be flying in their home states today. So, Michigan's definitely a really cool state. So our first waypoint coming up is Traverse City. Traverse City will be our first waypoint of the day. Here it is, guys. Traverse City will be our first waypoint here. Our next waypoint is Traverse City. This city in Michigan is a population of 15,000 people. Its metro area is around 153,000. It's the largest city in northern Michigan. And it's at the head of the east-west arms of the Grand Traverse Bay, which is the 32-mile-long bay of western Lake Michigan. And of course, it's nicknamed the cherry capital of the world due to the fact that it's one of the hotspots of cherry production, and even hosts the National Cherry Festival, attracting 500,000 visitors. And of course, it's also famous for its wine production, as it's home to 2 American viticultural areas adjacent to the city. So, pretty cool stuff. The city was settled back in 1847, and it was founded by Perry Hannah, Albert Lay, and Horace Borbett. One of the other interesting things about this city is, of course, its sport heritage. Um, it's also known as Hockentown North because the Red Wings held their training camp here at Traverse City Arena. They hosted players from other sports teams, and as a result, it's very popular for hockey. So pretty tough. So yeah, neat little city. We'll be flying over this city pretty soon. We make our way over Michigan. Mm. First city we'll come up. So all this is part of Traverse Bay, where we're flying over. Is over Traverse Bay. And all of this is part of the massive lake. Oh yeah, and when we talk about geography, Michigan's actually really unique. And I gotta be prepared for this morning as well. Yeah, here's downtown Traverse City here. Downtown, of course. Now we're going to head over to our first stop here in Cadillac, Michigan. So, talking about Michigan for a bit, let's talk about Michigan's geography for a bit. So, geographically, Michigan is known for its two peninsulas straight above the Strait of Mackinac. Um, of course, the great, and there are actually, and also Michigan's unique as it's bordered by 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. The Upper Peninsula is all about Lake Superior. Then the Lower Peninsula is surrounded by the other 3, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie. But in fact, the only lake it doesn't border is Lake Ontario. So something that's pretty unique. Of course, which makes it pretty unique. Also, the Upper Peninsula is actually pretty mountainous. If you ever flown on the Upper Peninsula, you know it's actually quite mountainous. And it's home to some of the oldest mountain chains in the world, which raise up to nearly 2,000 feet above sea level and form the watershed between the streams into Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. The Lower Peninsula is shaped like a mitten, and many residents hold up a hand to pick where they're from. The surface of the peninsula is generally level, broken by conical hills and glacial moraines not more than 100 feet tall. So basically, the Upper Peninsula is more mountainous, while the Lower Peninsula is more hilly and more level, with some hills and stuff. The highest point in the Upper Peninsula is Mount Avron at 1,979 feet. In the Lower Peninsula, the highest point is either Briar Hill or in the areas near Cadillac. The geographic orientation of its peninsulas make it the longest between into the state. So as a result, the distance between the North and South Peninsula makes these regions pretty distinct. And of course, the state also has numerous large islands, most notably Isle Royale, Grand Isle, North Manitou, Beaver Island, and more. Those are some islands, and of course, it even features one national park, Isle Royale National Park, up in the Upper Peninsula. Of course, Michigan's climate is mainly continental with 2 distinct regions. South and central parts of the Lower Peninsula, they form the Grand Rapids, have a warmer climate, while the northern part is more severe climate with warmer but short summers and longer cold to very cold winters. And often Michigan's also affected by lake effect snow, which means the state can average from 30 to 40 inches of precipitation annually. However, in the Upper Peninsula, it could reach to almost 160 inches of snowfall a year. Yeah, that's a lot. The highest recorded temperature ever recorded in Michigan is at Mio at 112 degrees Fahrenheit in 1936. And the coldest recorded temperature was in Vanderbilt in northern Michigan at a blistering negative 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, it does average 30 thunderstorm activity a year and averages 17 tornadoes, which is more common in the extreme south. So, that's pretty interesting to know about Michigan. As we go down to the Wolverine state. here, we're going to be arriving to our first stop very shortly, to our first stop of the day. I hope you're all having a good time here on the stream. I know it's been weekend. I wonder what Murph's going to be going on this week on his streams. I wonder if he's got his schedule. Oh, he only did 10 hours of the Bremen flight. Okay, so Chelsea did not bend it against Ipswich. But still, man, that's not a result you would have wanted. I would have taken the 3 points, but man, not what Chelsea would have wanted. Liverpool's going to probably win. Another win for the Reds. Not surprised. And then Wolves are going to absolutely crush Spurs. That's going to be good for us because that's going to be good for Everton because they don't have to pass us. Which is good for the Toffees. Of course, Monday's going to be Bournemouth Fulham, which is going to be pretty interesting. By the way, if you guys haven't got a chance to get into Bournemouth, they got a tiny stadium. 1,000 people. Not very big. In fact, Lynn Family Stadium is only just 1,000 people less than that stadium. We're about to. Hey, good to see you, Musty Cat. Good to see you. Where are you flying? Well, we're Musty Cat. We're actually in Michigan today. We just landed. Oh, I need to update the route. See, I wake up in the early morning. I kind of forget things. Yeah, give me a second. Let me update the route. For today is going to be is. Let me give you the update. My bad. We're in Michigan today, and we're flying here. We're KMCD. We're gonna fly to Grand Rapids next. We're gonna go to Detroit for our final stop. So, so here you go, Musty Cat. We're in here now. So, my apologies, I didn't know. So we're gonna go ahead and prepare for the second leg here. We're gonna head up to Grand Rapids. That's where we're flying right now. We're heading down to Grand Rapids. So we're gonna head down to Grand Rapids here. This next flight will be around 88 nautical miles. The last leg is gonna be by far the longest leg of the stream. So we're gonna head down to Michigan economically. So as we head down to Grand Rapids, we'll talk about Michigan's economic situation here in Michigan. Now, in terms of economically speaking, Michigan has around 3 million people employed in 2022. Its gross state product is around 711 billion US dollars, ranking 14th of the 50 US states. Its main interests in services include automobiles, food products, information tech, aerospace, military equipment, furniture, and mine of copper and iron ore. Also, Michigan fun facts: Michigan is the third largest grower of Christmas trees, with around 60,000 acres of which dedicated to farming in 2007. It's also home to one of the oldest soft drinks, Verner's Ginger Ale, was invented in 1866. You also have Faygo Beverages, which was founded in Detroit in 1907, as well as two of the top four pizza chains founded in the state: Domino's Pizza and Little Caesars. So, pretty interesting fact here as well. Michigan is also ranked very highly in high-tech employment as of 2002. It's ranked fourth with around 70,000 people in the automotive industry, 568,000 high-tech workers. And it typically ranks third or fourth overall in R&D expenditures in the entire country. In fact, its a higher R&D has more higher percentage for its gross domestic product than any other U.S. state. So, as a result, for research and development, Michigan is king in terms of research and development. Major state for that. Of course, one of the interesting other points about Michigan as well is also healthcare as well. Of course, Michigan's one of the other interesting things about Michigan to talk about is agriculture. Because Michigan, thanks to its unique climate and such, Michigan can grow a very wide range of commodity crops, fruits, and vegetables. In fact, it's second only to California among all U.S. states for agriculture diversity. as it has over 54,000 farms utilizing nearly 10 million acres of land. And some of these valuable products include milk, corn, soybeans, flowers, wheat, sugar beets, and potatoes. Livestock includes nearly 78,000 sheep, a million cattle, a million hogs, and more than 3 million chicken. And those livestock contribute around 38% of the value of agricultural products. A lot of people don't know this, but Michigan is actually the leading grower of fruit, including blueberries, tart cherries. In fact, Michigan is one of the major cherry producers, apples, grapes, and peaches. In fact, Michigan produces 70% of the country's cherries, and they are mainly Montmorency cherries, which is the most popular variety of cherry in the country. Michigan also grows plums, pears, and strawberries. Mainly, they are grown in the western half. So, pretty important stuff here, too. In Northwest Michigan, produces a lot of wines, beers, and processed foods are grown in that part of Michigan. And of course, Michigan's also home to this fertile land of the Saginaw Valley to grow corn, sugar beets, navy beans, and soybeans. So yes, Michigan is a major agricultural power of the United States. And it is a very important area for that as well. And then finally, of course, and what's also going on the rise is tourism. Michigan spent nearly $17 billion in tourism as of 2011, providing jobs for 193,000 people. And Michigan's tourism is one of the busiest in the country. And there's actually a good reason why people like to come visit Michigan, including vacationers, hunters, and nature enthusiasts as well. First, over half of Michigan's all forested land, and much of it is still remote. And that's mainly in the northern peninsula in particular. So it makes it prime hunting grounds as well. And for nature lovers too, there's also festivals. Tulip Time Festival and the National Cherry Festival. Of course, Detroit is one of the major cities in tourism. Is the city of Detroit. Thanks to the Henry Ford, the Detroit Institute of Arts, Detroit Zoo, and all the sports teams in this city, as well as other well-known destinations. Hunting and fishing are also major significance, thanks to a lot of fishing opportunities in the Great Lakes for salmon, trout, walleye, perch. And believe it or not, Michigan first in the nation in all licensed hunters. Yes, more than any other U.S. state, even more so than other states. As well as one of the largest dedicated state forest system in the country. And a lot of the forest products are important too. So yes, in Michigan's also, you'd be surprised, but yes, Michigan is also a world-class scuba diving destination. Yes, you would think, why in the heck would you think Michigan for scuba? No, it's actually because with this position in the Great Lakes and all the ships that are foundered over the years, it's not surprising. In fact, there are 11 underwater areas in Michigan that are protected for sport divers. Yeah, I'm not kidding. It's a scuba destination. That's like, you would never expect this to be. Yes, there's actually 13 of these preserves here in the state of Michigan. hard to believe this. So there's actually 13 preserves, and they include Alger Underwater Preserve. They got Marquette, Straits of Mackinac Shipwreck Preserve, Whitefish Preserve, and more. There's actually a lot of really cool stuff. So if you look at the Straits of Mackinac, for example, you can find some pretty notable shipwrecks there found all over the place. Yes. Scuba diving, who would have thought? Michigan scuba. Even I'm not even aware of that too. We're going to go ahead and continue more forward here. We're going to continue on this way. We're about nearly halfway there to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Some pretty important things about Michigan for us to kind of explore here today. But yeah, there is actually diving in Michigan. There's over 100 wrecks in the marine sanctuary. Yeah, again, Michigan is not what a lot of people expected for scuba diving. So one of the other things I decided to do, actually, I've been thinking about wanting to do something different for one of my streams. So if you guys are aware, I'm thinking about doing a trail series called Picking Up the Trail. So basically, I'm doing the trail series as well. So after doing some thinking, I'm mainly gonna just do the scenic trails, I believe. Like, there's a lot of really cool historical trails I like that are important. But my issue with those is that many of them go to some of the same destinations and stuff. Um, um, and I just felt like that isn't really that interesting. Like, for example, the California Trail. For example, some of the Mormon Trail, California, Mormon, Oregon trails are basically the same trails. They just go to a different ending location. And I just didn't think that would be super interesting to do those types of trails. And I just didn't think that would be that interesting as well. Maybe the one exception for the trail could be maybe the one exception would be if I were doing the California Trail and all that, I could just split it off at Fort Hall, go to Fort Hall or South Pass, and then do the split trails. For example, if I'm doing Oregon Trail, I could do Fort Hall and then do the rest of the Oregon Trail. Or the California Trail, I head south, get to Stars Hill. Maybe that might be something I could do. I guess I could still do some of these trails. I don't know what I want to do with that. Like some of these trails, I'm still going to keep, like the Rio Camino Real, the Tejas National Historic Trail. I'll still probably keep a lot of these trails. I'm gonna have to make some adjustments to some of these trails. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to make some adjustments. There's a lot of stuff gonna go on probably how I want to plan this. I'll still do the scenic trails. I'll definitely do all of those. So we'll head to Grand Rapids, Michigan for our next stop. We'll be at Grand Rapids. This is actually Michigan's second biggest city, located in the western part of the state. Population is around 198,000 people, but its metro area is 1.16 million. Located in the Grand River, 25 miles east of Lake Michigan, it's the cultural and economic hub of West Michigan. This city was most well known for being a manufacturing center for furniture, home to 5 of the world's leading office furniture companies in the world. It also is home to a lot of micro craft breweries, so as a result, known as the Beer City, US. And many local civic organizations also call it the River City. Its industries also include those of healthcare, information tech, automotive, aviation, and consumer goods manufacturing. And one last fun fact, Grand Rapids was actually the childhood home of U.S. President Gerald Ford, who was the 38th president, and he is buried with his wife Betty on the grounds of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum. And he's also got the namesake of an airport, of the city's main airport, and one of its freeways. Grand Rapids got started in 1826 for European settlement in 1826, and the first settler was Isaac McClure, a Baptist minister, first settler here in Grand Rapids. But of course, furniture making was the big part of its industry. There were a lot of manufacturers such as American Seating, Steelcase, Hallworth, and Herbert Miller were based in and around the area. Of course, it was also used a lot of manufacturing. GE Aviation Systems actually has one of their locations here and more. Of course, Grand Rapids is also getting more popular for tourism thanks to its President Gerald R. Ford Museum, Bellcap Hill, John Ball Zoological Garden, and a few more other areas here too. It's also home to one of the oldest history museums in the country, the Van Andel Museum Center, founded in 1854. And of course, it's home to several minor league sports, most notably the West Michigan Whitecaps of minor league baseball. And it's also home to the minor league hockey team, the Grand Rapids Griffins of the American Hockey League. Pretty important stuff. And finally, for our second stop is going to be Gerald R. Ford International Airport, the main airport serving the Grand Rapids region. It was founded in 1919. But of course, the modern airport was actually started in 1926. It mainly is a small hub primary service. It opened at Kent County Airport, but renamed to Gerald R. Ford Airport in 1999. As of 2023, it has flights at 33 airports in the country, and it's only one of 2 airports west of Lansing with main commercial services. And it's state's second busiest airport after Detroit. So, pretty neat little stuff. It flies to some country destinations across the country, mostly on the East Coast. They include, of course, Charlotte, Dallas, Chicago. Yes, that's actually a pretty short flight. Miami, Phoenix, LaGuardia. Delta actually does fly to Detroit. Yes, Grand Rapids, Detroit's actually a thing. Atlanta, St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul, New York, Orlando, Baltimore, Vegas, and a few others. And the busiest route is to Chicago O'Hare, funnily enough. Despite being the fact that Chicago to Grand Rapids, that is actually a very short flight. In fact, the Chicago to Grand Rapids flight is really short. I actually did this flight in person. No joke, it is actually pretty short. It's 136 miles between Grand Rapids and Chicago for flights. So basically, you just take off, and it's like really good for the smaller aircraft, but man, it is a very short. Basically, a flight from this would be basically flying from Pittsburgh over to Columbus. Not a very long flight. Vegas. I don't have much time to fly. Oh yeah, so okay, Monday he's gonna be back doing the FAA stuff. So he's gonna go VFR from Quonset State to Boston, then to Nashua. So he'll be doing some more FAA for flights in the United States. So he's gonna do more ATC stuff Monday. Murph's gonna be back for the Iberia Drift in Spain. So he'll be trucking off to Spain, doing Lord knows what. Better not crash. And then Friday he's gonna do the CRJ2 from Venus to Vegas to LA. Yeah, we have a hub in Vegas. These good news, Fireflyer has a hub in Vegas, thankfully. So at least we have that. Yeah, I'm waiting for when PNDG Farm brings that 737 back. Because I really wanted to do some of the airliner stuff again. I know I've been waiting for that for a long time. Because man, I'm very much looking forward to flying the 737 out of Vegas. Because once I do that, I'll probably do some of the airliner stuff again. So I'll be doing some stuff out of Vegas. Probably do some service flights Vegas over to LA. Or maybe I could do Vegas over to Reno. Or maybe I'd do some flying out of Pittsburgh, probably. Maybe I'll do some stuff out of Pittsburgh, probably. Do some flying on the East Coast. Pittsburgh over to... I guess I'll pick a handful of destinations. Yeah, here it is, guys. Grand Rapids is coming up. Here it is, guys. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Why not? Sally the Sea has no photogrammetry, though. Here it is, guys. Grand Rapids. Lansing has photogrammetry, but not Grand Rapids. Here we are, guys. We're about to hit the Grand Rapids Regional, so that will be our second stop of the day. We'll land at runway 08 left. We'll land there, and we'll stop here for a bit, and then prepare for the next leg to our third and final leg over to Detroit. which will be the longest leg of the flight. Yep, nice to finally get this thing working again, so that way I can just use my left. Here's, guys, our second stop of the day here in Grand Rapids. Celebrate. We'll just wait here for just a bit until we get to the last leg of our stream. We'll just be up in about a minute. We'll be making our way to the final leg of our trip here in beautiful Michigan. Here, we're gonna end up in Detroit. So we'll be up in just about a minute, waiting for time to actually come. go. We're going to go ahead and climb up to 2,500 feet as we reach to our next waypoint, Lansing. So, about Michigan as well, let's talk about Michigan's culture for a bit. So, one of the major contributions to Michigan's culture is its musical history, mainly with arts. You see, music is actually a pretty important role in Michigan history, especially in the city of Detroit. Over the past 50 years, Detroit was one of the most musically influential and innovative cities. In fact, for 48 straight years from 1959 to 2007, a greater Michigan area artist has produced a chart topping recording, mainly with three developments: early punk rock, Motown, and techno. Punk rock got its origins as well. Motown basically is its own version of Motor City music, and techno, which is dance music. And there are many Michigan musicians with the Billboard #1 hit from the 50s, like Scott Mitchell and Bill Haley. 60s include the Supremes, Temptations, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Soul, Aretha Franklin, and more. The 70s have Grand Funk Railroad, the Spinners, and the Knack. The 80s, of course, has none other than the Queen of Pop herself, Madonna, as well as Bob Seger. The 90s bring Aaliyah, the Queen of Urban Pop. The 2000s have Eminem, and Eminem in the 2000s had Eminem. Other Detroit Michigans with the #1 record and #1 album include Kid Rock, Jack White of White Stripes, and the Raconteurs, Big Sean, and many others. But yeah, Detroit has a big type of music. Of course, one of the big things that have dominated Detroit for years has been Motown Records. And they dominate the soul music genre, popular for a lot of African American communities, including those of Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Aretha Franklin, who's actually buried in Detroit, Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Martha and the Vandellas, Smokey Robinson, and even the Jackson 5. Soul was a dominant figure. And finally, of course, punk rock was also a big deal, such as NC5, the Stooges, including that of none other than Iggy Pop himself, born from Muskegon, and many others. Yes, music has been a huge part of Michigan's rich history music genre. Outside of music, though, one of the other major parts that Michiganders love are their sports. Michiganders love their sports. Pretty obvious why they like their sports. I mean, their major league teams are all based in the Detroit area, most notably that of the baseball team, the Detroit Tigers, the Lions of the NFL, the Detroit Red Wings of the NHL, and the NBA's Detroit Pistons. They all play in the Detroit area. The most famous of all these teams is probably the Detroit Red Wings of the NHL. They've been the most successful team and they were one of the original six NHL teams. The Pistons now play at the new Little Caesars Arena along with the Red Wings. The Lions currently play at Ford Field, and then the Tigers play at Comerica Park. In addition to this as well, Michigan is also a well-known state for collegiate sports, particularly the two major ones, Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans. And those are they're in the same conference, and they're in the same. Yes. Michiganers love their sports. Hey, Sky Command, good to see you, my dude. Check out Sky Command and his channel. Great dude, I love Sky Command. Good to see you. Yeah, we're in Michigan, baby. But yes. Yeah, so Michigan's definitely a really cool state. Yes, Michiganers absolutely love their sport. They really do love it. Happy Sunday to you, my dude. I hope you're doing well, guy. Jesus, super sexy. Very funny you mentioned that, Sky Command. Very funny. I like that joke. So yeah, we're heading to Lansing right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and get Lansing taken out of the way. Because Lansing is actually Michigan's capital city. Lansing. Lansing is Michigan's capital. Of course, Lansing is a population of around 112,000, so it's the sixth most populous city in Michigan. Its metro area is 541,000 people, which is actually the third largest in the state after Detroit and Grand Rapids. And it was named the new capital of Michigan in 1847. And it's an important center for the educational, cultural, governmental, commercial, and industrial functions of the state. Its neighboring city, East Lansing, is home to Michigan State University, more than 50,000 students. And Lansing, funnily enough, is the only state capital that's also not a county seat. So that's pretty important to know. It was settled in 1835. And of course, Lansing's known for several of its events and stuff, including the Common Ground Festival, which hosts 90,000 for the week. It's got many notable acts. There's also different parades, including the Michigan Pride Festival. The African American Parade are also known here in there. And there's several important points of interest, most notably the historic Potter Pot Zoo, which is the oldest zoo in the state of Michigan. Pretty important stuff about Lansing. So we'll fly over the Capitol, and we'll also fly over Michigan State University. Fly over the Capitol, and then we'll get to visit Michigan State University, home of the Spartans. And that will get us to the next waypoint over to Ann Arbor, which is home to Michigan. You know, Michigan State, they don't like each other at all. No, seriously. Michigan and Michigan State do not like each other. In-state rivalry, it's a pretty big one, too. Michigan definitely pretty cool. Really neat state. I think I think the closest we're going to visit Michigan probably is going to be um I think we're more likely going to probably visit Holland, Michigan, which is just southwest of Grand Rapids. Holland's a pretty cool little community here. And it's not far from Muskegon. Up north would be Muskegon, Grand Rapids, and plus we can also drive our way down to Indiana Dunes National Park for a day trip before heading home. I don't know what I'm going to want to do for the trail series because, like I said, I think the trails would be pretty cool, but I think I'm gonna have to look at some of these trails because if, for example, much of the California Mormon and some of these trails fall the same places as it does normally. So either I alternate some of these trails or because that's one of the main issues. If some of those historic trails are the same, should I do how I separate these routes? Because some of these trails are historically been very important. The Oregon Trail is really important. I guess for the California Trail, because there's a lot of different immigrant trails. Like, for example, I'm keeping the Santa Fe Trail because that's unique since it goes down into Santa Fe, Mexico. And it actually continues on to the trail into Mexico. Then the old Spanish Trail is also unique. Those two are going to be kept. But the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails are all and of course, there's the Butterworth Trail, too. And of course, there's the Berlin Overland Trail. Which is one of the newest trails in the entire system, which goes through Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. So I don't know. I don't know how I want to plan that one out. What I'm probably going to do is do the Oregon Trail first and do much of what is the Oregon Trail. Then at Fort Hall, which is one of the places they stopped on the trip, then do Fort Hall and then split off from Fort Hall over to first do the Mormon Trail, do the Mormon part of it. Then from there, do the continuation and do the California Trail, the rest of the California section, and do that here. That way, I can do all those versions of the trail and save me a bit of time from having to do the entire thing over again. Save me time from having to do. We'll still get a little bit of the uniqueness of that trail. Because if all those trails are from the same part, then why do those in the first place? Not being mean, I'm just trying to be honest. Because most of the other historic trails are fine because they all take different places in. Here's downtown Lansing. You guys are aware, here's downtown Lansing, Michigan. So there's the state capitol. Right in the center is the state capitol. There's downtown Lansing. Then we'll fly over Michigan State. But yeah, I want to actually think about that because I want to Yes, I could do all those trails, but some of these trails are pretty long, and if they go to some of the same places, I don't know what to. So here is Spartan Stadium down here for the Spartans. Of course, Michigan State is a very historically been a very successful football program. I don't know what to do. I'm interested because most of the other historic trails are fine, but some of these go to the same places, and I may have to think of it. On one hand, I could do the entire trail and do all this again, but my main issue would be if they go to many of the same trail places as normal. You get what I mean, Typhon? Go to much of the same trails and stuff. Basically, that's kind of how I feel. Like every other trail thing's fine. Like for example, most of the trails are all going to unique places. That's all. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just trying to think. How would I want? How would I want to? That's all. But I think for the his scenic trails, I'm going to mainly focus on bush plane because they're scenic and they're meant to be hiked. So of course, for more Michigan stuff, we're going to be going. Before we get to Ann Arbor, of course, we'll talk about the rest of the other Michigan stuff. So for transportation purposes, Michigan, um, Michigan has several international road crossings, are a big part of it, and there's 4 Class 1 railroads here in the state of Michigan: the Canadian National Railway, the Canadian Pacific Railway, DSX Transportation, and Norfolk Southern Railway, augmented by several dozen short-line railroads across the state. Most of the rail is freight. In terms of roadways, there are multiple main roadways in the state, but most notably Interstate 75 going through Detroit, Flint, and Saginaw, the St. Sault Marie, and it goes through the upper and lower peninsula. But also other ones include I-69 for the Michigan-Ohio-Indiana border, I-94, and I-96. In terms of aviation, Detroit is home to the state's busiest airport, Detroit Metro area, which is the 16th busiest airfield in North America. The next busiest is in Grand Rapids, followed by Flint Bishop. Other airports include Cherry Capital Airport in Traverse City, Kalamazoo Bow Creek, Capital Region Airport in Lansing, and MBS in Midland. So that's the other piece of transportation here in Michigan. Okay, guys, here's some fun facts about the Great Lakes State, Michigan. The world's largest limestone quarry is located in Rogers City, Michigan. Has the most limestone. Michigan's often called the Wolverine State, though, fun enough, you can't find any of the Wolverines here in the state of Michigan. In 1817, the University of Michigan was the first university established by any of the states. It was actually originally named Cathal Pistaminian and located in Detroit, and name was changed in 1821, and the university was moved to Ann Arbor just 20 years later. One of the longest Michigan bridges in the world is located in the Mackinac Straits, known as the Mackinac Bridge, and spans 5 miles over the straits, where Lake Michigan and Lake Huron meet. And finally, of course, Turner's Ginger Ale was created in Detroit and was the first soda pop in the country. It was actually invented here in Michigan. Apparently, in 1862, G. Turner was trying to create a new beverage when he was called away to serve our country in the U.S. Civil War. When he returned, the drink he had stored in an oak case had acquired a delicious gingery flavor, and that created the ginger ale. Yeah, pretty cool stuff, guys. So basically, ginger ale, if you guys aren't aware of it, it's carbonated soft drink with flavor with ginger. The whole story of this happened, of course, with ginger ale. Yeah, how cool is that? Yeah, it's really cool though. Michigan's got ginger. Michigan's home to many notable people. Where do I even begin with some of the notable people? Nelson Algren, author from Detroit, Edna Ferber, another author from Kalamazoo, the famous industrialist and the namesake of Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford from Dearborn, actress Julie Parker, born of Grosse Pointe Park, William R. Hewlett, inventor out of Ann Arbor, the legendary aviator Charles Lindbergh from Detroit, the Queen of Pop herself, Madonna from Bay City, the infamous Ted Nugent from Detroit, Siegel, actor from Lansing, singer Bob Seger from Detroit, Tom Selleck, another actor from Detroit, and Stevie Wonder from Saginaw, Michigan. Yes, a lot of very famous people from the Great Lakes State. How cool is that, guy? Of course, if you know anything about college sports, we're headed to Ann Arbor. So yes, Michigan and Michigan State do not like each other. Michigan State, in East Lansing, has won multiple national championships in a variety of sports, including football, most notably winning 5 national titles in 1951, 52, 1955, 1957, and 1966. The men's team have won a national championship in basketball in 1979 and 2000, and its ice hockey team won 3 national championships in 1966, 1986, and 2007. Their teams are known as the Spartans, and they produce some many famous alumni in many sports. For baseball, they produced guys like Robin Roberts, Kirk Gibson, Steve Garvey, and Mark Mulder. Basketball program most famously produced Magic Johnson himself. Earvin Magic Johnson, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, played at Michigan State, as well as other stars, including that of Draymond Green, Scott Skiles, and a few others, and Zach Randolph. And football's produced a lot of great programs, and they include players such as Plaxico Burress, Le'Veon Bell, Kirk Cousins, Lawrence Thomas has produced a few of them, Andre Rison, Derek Mason, and a few others. They produced a ton of iconic football. Oh yeah, and also several Hall of Famers, including Herb Adderley, Orrin Anderson, and Joe DeLamour. Some of the famous Pro Football Hall of Famers that played at Michigan State. Of course, we're heading to Ann Arbor, and that means the University of Michigan is pretty much king. Ann Arbor is actually one of the great college towns in the country. It's the most populous city, population of 123,000 people, found in 1824 by John Allen and Elisha Rumsley. And Ann Arbor was known as home of the University of Michigan, and it became one of the big college towns in the country, which employs nearly 30,000 workers, and a lot of people come to the university's research and development infrastructure, and is a center for political politics. However, the big part of culture here is, no question, University of Michigan, which is to no one's surprise at all. But University of Michigan has been one of the most historically been successful athletics programs in the country. Of course, they're known as the Wolverines. They have been one of the most successful in multiple sports. So, in baseball, they won national championships in 1953 and 1952 and have sent many baseball players to the major leagues. That includes multiple stars in Major League Baseball, including Hall of Famer Barry Larkin, most famously Barry Larkin, but also Branch Rickey, who helped break the baseball's color barrier, and George Sisler, another legendary Hall of Fame first baseman. Other stars include Larry Sorensen, Dick Wakefield, Steve Ho, J.J. Putz, Jake Cronenworth, Steve Ontiveros, or at least some of the most well-known baseball players that come out of Michigan. Basketball is another pretty notable program, and they were actually quite a successful basketball program. They even won a national championship in 1989 and they appeared in multiple other Final Four. But they produced several notable famous basketball players too. Most notably Glenn Rice, Jalen Rose, Fritz Weber, Juwan Howard, and Jamal Crawford. Just at least named a few for Michigan. They were once known as the Fat Four too. That was one of the most famous teams of the. But of course, if I had to talk about the pride and joy about Michigan, it's gotta be football. No question, Michigan football is one of the historically great powers in college football. In fact, they've won more games than any other college program with over 1,000 wins. And they've also have 12 national championships, which is actually, believe it or not, the second most of any program besides Alabama. I talked earlier how Alabama is an institution, so is Michigan football. And they've had some legendary coaches and stuff over the years, including some of the most legendary coaching staff, including Bo Schembler and Lloyd Carr, and in recent years has been Jim Harbaugh, who has had an amazing legacy in Michigan. And who can forget about some of the famous Hall of Famers out? Michigan has actually produced tons of Hall of Famers, including most notably Dan Diedorf, Len Ford, Benny Friedman, Bill Hewitt, Elroy Hirsch, Steve Hutchinson, Ty Law, Tom Mack, and the most recent Michigan player to make the Hall of Fame, Charles Woodson. And there are still tons of Michigan players in the league as of this year. Some of them include, there are a lot of players from Michigan that are playing in the NFL. There's a lot of really good players like Peppers. Yeah, Michigan has had a rich history with football. In fact, Gerald Ford's number is also retired up here too. Yes, he was a Michigan Wolverine. Well, of course, they're also successful in other sports too, including ice hockey as well. In fact, Michigan is also a well-known hockey power as well for ice hockey, as they won a ton of national championships in hockey too. They won multiple championships in ice hockey, and some of the Wolverines have even been in the NHL. Kyle Connor, Fred Berenson, Marty Beaners, Max Pacioretty, Mike Komisarek, Dylan Larkin, and Zach Wierenski, as well as Marty Turco of the goalies. Yes, lots of very famous Michigan. Michigan, no question, is tons of famous players. Here we go, guys. Ann Arbor. We went east of Ann Arbor. Head back to downtown Ann Arbor. Head back to downtown. Fly over the campus. Here's downtown Ann Arbor. Oh yeah. And we're gonna finally fly over the famous stadium too. Because trust me, you know how many people can fit in the big house? You guys really want to know Michigan State how many people can fit in the big house? You guys really want to know how much people can fit in Michigan Stadium? 170,000 people can fit into this one area. Yeah, it's the largest stadium in the country. That's also why that's why I wanted to hit there. Guess what? No sports fan in Michigan will ever be complete without visiting Michigan Stadium. 107K. That's bigger than every other stadium, not just in the United States. It's bigger than all those in Europe. Trust me, they don't call it the big house for. So yeah, next week we're going to be back for next week. I'll let you know the schedule, but I believe next week we're going to do some more flying. I want to do some flying in a bit of. I want to do some flying around some interesting regions. I think about doing some flying in Portugal. So we're going to go ahead and head up to Ypsilanti, Michigan, home of East Michigan University, EMU. So that's going to be Michigan. Home of the Eagles. Also, fun fact, their football stadium, by the way, their football stadium's actually on gray turf. No, I am not kidding. They actually do play on a gray turf facility. Here's East Michigan. So, we're going to go ahead and talk about Detroit, Michigan, the Motor City itself. Detroit is Michigan's most populous city, situated on the bank of the Detroit River. Its population is 639,000 in 2020. It's the 26th most populous city in the country and the largest city on the Canada-U.S. border. Its metro area is at a whopping 4.3 million people, the second largest in the Midwest after Chicago. Detroit, of course, was founded by French explorers Antoine de la Motte Cadillac and Alphonse de Tonty. And during the late 19th and early 20th century, it became one of the important industrial hubs of the country, especially in the Great Lakes, especially with the automotive industry as well. Of course, it entered a state of urban decay during the mid-20th century, which still continued on due to the loss of jobs in the auto industry and rapid suburbanization. At one point, it reached a peak of 1.85 million, though it declined by more than 65%. Hey, we got a new follow. NASCAR, be good to see you. Thank you for the follow. I hope you're doing well here today on this Sunday. We're in Michigan so far. We're headed to Detroit. Of course, Detroit, despite having a bit of a downturn, there are some good things about Detroit. For one, Detroit is rich in culture thanks to its music heritage with Motown, techno, jazz, hip hop, rock, and punk. There's several historic monuments and historic places that can be collected, and there's been a lot of conservation efforts to save many of these pieces And of course, there's a lot of revitalization in the city, including those of several theaters, entertainment venues, new renovations, new stadiums, and more. And it's increasingly more popular as a tourist destination. Around 16 million people visit Detroit every year. In 2015, Detroit was named the City by Design by UNESCO, the first and only U.S. city currently to have that designation. So yes, I know Detroit has historically had issue decay, but the fact they're able to revitalize some areas means Detroit actually has some hope. Hope it does, because Detroit really needs it. But yes. But they're actually working on gentrification and all that too. Detroit definitely, like I said, it is on the rise, and that is a good redevelopment stuff. That is very much a good thing for the city. Trust me, it needs it. For instance, say they can use some bit of the revitalization. And of course, our final stop and one of our landmarks is the Ambassador Bridge. It was opened back in 1929 to connect Detroit to Windsor, Ontario. We've actually visited this before. It is the busiest international cross-border crossing in North America due to trade volume, carrying more than 25% of all merchandise trade between the U.S. and Canada. And when it was opened, it was the longest suspension central span in the world, crossing nearly 1,850 feet. It was held until 1931 with the George Washington Bridge opened in New York, New Jersey. The full length of the bridge is around 7,500 feet. So we'll be meeting that bridge soon, and our final stop is Coleman A. Young Airport. It's actually now known as it's actually known as International Airport, even though it's not that. Mainly for GA, it used to have commercial services with Southwest for a few years, but it's no longer a major commercial airport, especially with the much larger Detroit Metro Airport taking up a lot of that space. It was actually once an airport dating back to 1927, and it was the city's main airport until, of course, the new Metro Airport. There's currently a lot of talks of knowing what to do. Though the one good thing is there's actually a layout plan to help build some new stuff at the airport and to improve the safety zones. So they might actually learn to expand this airport a bit, but currently right now they don't know really what to do. There's that as well. So that concludes our stream about Michigan. We're gonna head our way over to the Motor City. Let's head out to Detroit. So, make our way to Detroit, Michigan now, guys. If anyone's flying along here today. Okay, here's the massive Detroit Airport behind us. Yeah, that's the massive Metro Airport. Absolutely huge. Huge airport. If you ever do any flying between the Midwest, you're probably going to be familiar with Detroit Metro. It's a pretty cool airport to do some landing and flying in and out of. This is the Henry Ford area with the motor track and all that. Of course, you have his Museum of American Aviation, and you got all this Ford stuff here. Okay. So the next one we're going to fly over here is the Ford, Ford Dearborn plant, which is the Ford Road plant. And yeah, you can definitely see this is one of the symbols of Detroit's industrial history too. But it's more industrial like. I'm going to lower myself in altitude here to around 1,800 feet. Get a little closer to the Ambassador Bridge, one of the city's main landmarks. Oh yeah, and I'm also going to slow this plane down a little. Slow her down. Go a little slower with this bird. So let's look at the Premier League game. I'm checking that Newcastle-Manchester United game. Because I'm hoping Newcastle wins, because that'll help us. Okay, it's 1-1. Here it is, guys, the Ambassador Bridge. And believe it or not, I did do a city tour of Detroit in the past, as well as doing the Ambassador Bridge was one of our places. Yep, there's the Ambassador Bridge, one of our landmarks. Of course, here it is, guys. Downtown Detroit. So yeah, you can see several of the historic buildings here, including the GM Renaissance Tower. There is the two sport venues for the Tigers and Lions, respectively, here. There's the former Red Wings Arena. That is the Joe Louis Arena. There's the GM Renaissance Tower. Of course, this here is actually Belle Isle Park. It's home to several of the important city park areas, including a casino, conservatory, and places for live yachts. We're going to go ahead and set up our last, go ahead and head back to pretty cool stuff here. Let's go ahead and turn. And we're going to conclude our last stop here at Detroit Coleman. We're going to land at runway 33, and we're going to make our parking. So guys, thank you all so much for coming here today for our tour of Michigan. I know it's an absolutely really cool state, a lot of history, and in many ways it was one of the major centers of the. So I'll let you guys know where we're going to be heading back next week. But I know the next 50-state stream will come on Friday in the U.S. state of Florida. So I'm going to take the Grumman Albatross for that one. And we're going to fly over the U.S. state of Florida. Yes. I am very much looking forward to showing you guys off Florida. guys, that wraps up today's stream, guys. Welcome to Detroit. Guys, thank you all so much for coming here today. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. Michigan was definitely a very enjoyable flight. So we're going to go say hello to Kaharia today. I hope she's doing well. She's on one of her airliner stuff, so take care, guys, and I hope to see you all Wednesday. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great weekend. Take care, everyone.